mantra of the 10 Shanti mantras. The section that we have already discussed is my speech is established in my mind. My mind is established in my speech. Oh, the evident one, become manifest for me by removing the veil of ignorance. This much we have already studied. The next one also. Oh, speech and mind, be the ones that bring wisdom to me. This much we have studied. So, the central point, what we can call the central thesis of every Shanti mantra out of these, each one of these 10 Shanti mantras is prarthana for peace. And we can see it being repeated at the end of every mantra. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, if you, and I'm using the Sanskrit word, and I will explain it rather than using its English translation. Prarthana for Shanti. Shanti, all of us understand very well. We have come across this word again and again. It means peace. But prarthana, which is generally translated as prayer into English, in Sanskrit, artha means desire. And arthana means to express one's desire. And prarthana means focused expression of one's desire, one's need. So this is what prarthana means. If that sounds similar to prayer, then it is fine. Because, but in prayer has also this idea of supplication. You know that, isn't it? When you pray to God, then you also glorify the divine and all that. Prarthana is more an expression of one's need, an expression of one's desire. So each one of these mantras, the central idea in each one of these mantras, all the 10 of them, is to express a desire for peace or a virtue, a way of life, a method, a specific understanding, a specific practice that may help to lead to that peace, that may help cultivate peace in one's life. So like every mantra, this mantra too has to be seen ultimately in that context. So what we find in this mantra, just to summarize it a little bit before we continue, the expression of the desire to acquire peace has been expressed by the teacher of this mantra, by the rishi of this mantra, whose name was Mahidasa Aitareya, that he is asking for specific strengths, specific capabilities, which he has listed step by step in each one of the sections of this mantra, which in his understanding will lead to a peaceful state of mind in which the wisdom that he speaks of, that consciousness is Brahman, becomes clear and evident. It becomes what he calls the naturally evident essence. That becomes evident. So that is the idea. So for this, for example, the first section, that may my speech, I think the better translation would be, and this again we should correct, may my speech be established in my mind. It's really an expression of desire. In Sanskrit, you can translate it in both ways. Both translations would be correct, but as we see, other sections have the very expression of desire in them, may. So this section also should be translated like this. So we'll have to update the translation. So he's asking for the strength and capability to speak always from understanding. That is the first section. To speak always from understanding. So whenever, for example, the teaching that he gave before this mantra in the original, because these mantras, they are collected from different places. So there, when he speaks this consciousness in me is the supreme principle of this universe, and therefore is one and united with it, because there is no division in it. So when I make such a statement, then may I have the strength to make it with understanding. May I have the capability to make such a statement with understanding. And that, when I do this, when I speak such statements from understanding, it leads me to a peaceful state of mind. So that is the first section. Then the second section is in which he is asking for that which is self-evident to become evident for him. That is, again, this section too leads towards peace. When what is supposed to be the most evident essence within me, when that becomes really evident, and how this works, we had a detailed discussion in our previous session. When that happens, then peace arises in his understanding. But for that, I need the strength, the capability. And for that to become evident, what I have to do, I have to use speech and mind as a vehicle to receive this knowledge. I have to use my speech and my mind, these two tremendously powerful instruments that I have. They have to be used only towards this wisdom and for nothing else, not for unnecessary purposes. Then again, this practice too leads towards peace in his understanding. Someone who is willing to cultivate peace within himself has to follow these steps. And then once through speech, which means through words, and through the mind, which means through contemplation, knowledge and wisdom has been received, then it has to be retained. Then retention is necessary. That is the next step, which in his understanding, the more that awareness is retained, the more peaceful a human being becomes. So that is then the next step. And for that, I have to spend my entire day and my night, my day and night, on researching deeper into those teachings and into my own experiences. So that will lead me closer to peace. So everything, the whole mantra, every section of that mantra leads towards the central idea, which is peace of all these 10 Shanti mantras. Similarly, as we go ahead, we will see that speaking the higher truth from understanding, and then speaking the truth as perceived on this level, speaking the truth as it is on two different levels. We will discuss how this works. That too leads towards that peace. And then the Shanti mantra finishes with a prarthana, an expression of desire for protection and nourishment for both the the one who is speaking and the one who is listening. And what that means, that we yet have to discuss. So, really sorry. Completely. That's me. And I usually always put it on. Two things today that have never happened in my class. I never forgot the Shanti mantra. And my mobile never ever rang like this. Okay. So now, with this clarity in our mind that each section of this Shanti mantra is a step towards finding peace in ourselves. In that light, we can proceed further. The next part of this mantra is, may what I have heard not leave me. Because the Vedic teachings in antiquity and at least up to the 10th century, which is at least for more than 2,500 years, were never, at least I'm just saying, it could be 3,000, it could be 5,000, but they were never committed to writing. They were always just received by hearing and then by memorizing and then keeping them as memory. In fact, it is Al-Biruni who came with Mahmud, the king of Ghazni, which is now in Afghanistan. As he invaded the country, several scholars followed him and stayed back because he was just interested in plundering, in getting the wealth of this country. So the moment he received the wealth that he was looking for, he went back to his kingdom. He was simply what would you call it, a marauder, an invader who invades for the sake of. He even came. There is a story. No, it's not Mahmud. That was Tamerlane who came up to Rishikesh. But Mahmud Ghaznavi went more into the south on the western coast of India and went up to Gujarat. Somnath temple was his ultimate destination, to win that temple because it had an immense amount of wealth had been accumulated in that temple. And he attempted, I think, 14 or 18 times, 17 times or something, I don't remember the exact number. He came from Ghazni all the way and tried 17 times to reach there and to destroy it and go back with the wealth. But he succeeded only, I think, on the 17th or the 18th, on his 18th attempt. In any case, one of the scholars that followed him and stayed back and explored the rest of the country, its traditions, its lifestyle, was known as Al-Biruni. He was also a scientist, an astronomer, and quite a respected figure. He's a very important source of Indian history, of India for us to know about India as it was in the 10th century. So he also translated he prepared the first translation of the Yoga Sutras into a foreign language, which is in Arabic. Even though he was Persian, but being Arabic was considered the sacred and the literary language, so he translated into Arabic. And so it's he who, while traveling in India, was told by someone that just a few years ago, before he came to India, someone, and I don't remember now the name which he has mentioned, but it was a Brahmin in Kashmir who for the first time decided to write down the Vedas seeing that it is becoming increasingly difficult for individuals to commit their lifestyles completely and remember everything, retain everything in memory. So he's the source he's the first source where we find that someone has actually committed the Vedas to writing. So that is why they are referred to as Shruti. You don't read them, but you listen to them. And that's why also this prayer has come so many times also earlier, that may whatever I have heard, may it not leave me. So that because it's a difficult task. So, but he's expressing this desire very strongly that whatever I have heard, the teachings that I have heard, may they not leave me. May they be retained by me. Today we write things down on a piece of paper or on our computers, but back then even acquiring a piece of paper was not as easy as it was today. If you want to collect tree barks, then you had to travel vast distances. So the easiest was to write it down on the inner computer, which is the mind. So Shrutam me ma prahasihi means that may what I have heard, may it not leave me. And Shruta, as it is understood in Sanskrit, it doesn't simply mean something that has been heard. Even animals hear when we say something. They hear, but that's not what is meant by hearing. Simply so that I hear something and then I remember it. No. What Shruta means that which we have understood by hearing. So the emphasis is on understanding. What I have understood through my ears, may I retain that. And I think this is again very potent in the context of our yoga practice, where we particularly discourage to make notes in that moment when we are studying, when we are practicing yoga. If you get out of the posture and start making notes on the instructions, you lose what is being conveyed. You have to remain, to be able to understand what is being conveyed, you have to remain in that posture. And remaining in that posture doesn't allow you to make notes. So you can make notes in this class, but you cannot make notes in yoga class, in asana classes. There you have to rely on this prayer, that Shrutam me ma prahasihi, whatever I have not heard. And I think the best thing not to forget is to relate whatever is being said with our own experience, trying to feel what is being said, because what the teacher is conveying is their own experience, is their own feeling. Can I feel the same? And when I relate it with my feeling, with my experience, then it becomes the easiest to retain. Then it naturally doesn't leave. And if we can't relate it with our experience, then I think then maybe we are not ready for that. Then we still need to evolve further, practice more to become ready for that. And so then, if we forget, fine, because it was not a teaching meant for us. It was in a class that are maybe 100 people, 50 of them are very advanced, other 50 are 25 are intermediate, 25 are completely beginners. Not everything is for everyone. But for whoever it is, if that person relates it with their own feeling, with their own experience, then it becomes very easy to retain. Then it doesn't leave us. This is one thing. And the second meaning that is also present in this is that when we say that Shrutam Mayma Prahasi, what I have heard not leave me, the emphasis is not so much on what I have heard, but what I have understood. So the understanding, the quintessence of what I have heard, that should certainly not leave me. Even if the actual words leave me, even if the actual words are forgotten, then at least what was being conveyed, the very quintessence, the juice, the milk of that, or the example that is usually given is that a honeybee goes to a flower, takes out the essence, and then flies away with that essence in its mouth. This is how a student should approach a teacher, a student should approach a scripture. Scriptures and teachers, they are like these flowers. So the student has to draw out the essence and then fly away, carrying that essence in their mouth. That is basically what is being conveyed in this part of the mantra, that may what I have heard, which means may what I have understood by hearing, that quintessential message, that may not leave me. Because only then we can go to the next step, critical analysis and experiential testing. But this way, so we draw the quintessence and then we naturally start, how is this possible? Does this make sense? Or this doesn't make sense? So then we start critically treating our honey, our quintessence. And once it starts feeling logical, I think it seems quite logical. But then let me try to experience it. Let me see if I can really feel it through my practice, in my life, in whatever I am doing, in my asana practice. Can I feel it? That requires that again a lot of more practice. So, but these steps will only unfold, and they unfold naturally when we have drawn out the quintessence. And that is why there is one word It's a beautiful word. It can be a beautiful name. I don't see it as a name of many girls. I have not come across any woman named except one in Swami Rama's ashram. She's from Hong Kong and her name is Medha. But it's a beautiful, beautiful name. Generally it is translated as intellect, as intelligence, the faculty of understanding. And there are many hymns dedicated to her as a goddess in the Vedas. In fact, these hymns are quite popular. And when people learn recitation in different, I've seen in different parts of the world, when they learn recitation of the hymns, there is one hymn known as Medha Sukta. Sukta means hymn. Medha Sukta, hymn dedicated to Medha. But what really Medha means in the Vedas themselves is this retention power. It's not even memory, because memory can be without understanding. You can just memorize something, receive it like a parrot. Om Shanno Nitra Shambhavana Shambhavana. You just memorize it. And then you can keep on pronouncing it for the rest of your life without ever understanding its meaning. So that is smriti, that is memory. Medha is something deeper. Medha is the capacity to retain the essence. That is what medha. So it's kind of memory, but it's a deeper memory. It's not the memory of words, but it is the memory to retain the essence. And so that is why there are so many hymns dedicated to Medha, because the masters, they want to strengthen this innate human capacity, cultivate it, so that the essence can be retained. And it is that essence which then leads in our way of thinking, in our way of behavior, in our the kinds of decisions that we take in our lives, which then ultimately lead us towards finding peace in ourselves. And that is why, in the context of peace, he's asking that may what I have heard, may it not leave me, which means may I strengthen this medha, this power of retaining the quintessence in me. This is what this part of the mantra is speaking about. Now the next section, anena adhitena ahora tran sandadhami. By this that has been studied, may I merge day and night. Again, I think may should be added. By this that has been studied. Sometimes in the Sanskrit, as it can be translated as both. So there, where clearly Sanskrit says may, there I have added may, where not then, but it is implied everywhere. I think so. Yeah. By this that has been studied, may I merge day and night. Okay. The word that has been used here, adhita means to study. Or even better, it is the same, it is the past participle of adhyaya in swadhyaya. So it's the past participle of adhyaya means study, swadhyaya means self-study, and adhita is the past participle of adhyaya, that which has been studied. That is called adhita, which means ultimately in Sanskrit the word for studying simply means, literally means received. So that which has been received, may I merge day and night with that. Now here a beautiful word has been used, sandhana. Sandhana. Sandhana is, just to show a little bit the context of this word. The Sanskrit word is sandhana. Sorry. Anusandadhami, it's there. Anena adhitena ahoratran sandadhami. Sandadhami is the verbal form of this word, sandhana. Sandhana means to unite, to merge. That is what it means. It also means to aim. So for example, if you are aiming an arrow, so that is what we call banaka sandhana, the aiming of the arrow. So that is also sandhana. And sandhana also means research, investigation, inquiry. That's why today in India, research centers are referred to as Anusandhana Kendra. Anusandhana, research, investigation, where you go deeper into the received teaching. Because sandhana means to unite, to connect. In fact, research unfolds as you connect various streams of thoughts, various individual ideas. First of all, you receive these individual ideas, and then within you, in a state of meditation, you start to connect them. It's the same in our asana practice also. First we receive individual postures, we receive individual techniques, we receive individual ideas related to our postures, but then slowly and slowly they have to be connected to each other. That connection of different streams, that connection of different teachings, that connection is ultimately what research is about. So sandhana means to connect, to establish connections between various streams of thoughts and ideas, and to do that would be anusandhana. That would be called research. So may I merge my day and night in researching deeper into these teachings. This is sometimes like there is the word yoga abhyasa, the practice of yoga. We hear it so often. In the Master's teachings, we also hear another word. I'm not writing it down, it will be easy for you to remember. Brahma abhyasa, like yoga abhyasa, in the same way, Brahma abhyasa. Brahma abhyasa simply means to constantly retain the awareness of this inner light of consciousness. Whenever the need of speaking arises, then to speak about it. In the context, if someone is not yet aware of it, then to convey this awareness to that person. And if you come across someone who already has this awareness, then test your own understanding by discussing your thoughts, your ideas with an equal-minded friend who has also cultivated this understanding. And like this, constantly to be engaged in a constant search of this deepest mystery hidden within our own body. This is called Brahma Vyasa. And my teacher used to say that how to merge day and night, does it mean that you don't fall asleep? you don't sleep, you just even that doesn't make sense. It's nonsensical. So what does it mean? So he used to say that whatever we do in our life to retain this awareness at the back of your mind and be constantly inspired by it. And he used to say that to have that awareness even in the moments of falling asleep, and to have the awareness the moment we wake up. This is a technique that was taught in ancient India from very earlier stages. So if, for example, if somebody was doing japa, recitation of a particular mantra, the idea was that fall asleep while doing that japa. And then the moment you wake up, hopefully the first thought goes to the mantra, then you can come and declare that you have been doing japa for the whole night. This is completely correct. This is a truthful statement. That if you say that today, the whole night I have done japa for 10 hours. If you just managed to fall asleep while doing japa, and again, the moment you wake up, you have the same thought in there. And one thing is certain, that when you fall asleep thinking about something, most likely it is going to be there also in our dreams. In our dreams we'll be occupied by it, and we might have very different perspectives, very, very different perspectives in our dreams on the same thought, on the same idea, which might have never ever occurred to us in the waking state of consciousness. Because in the waking state of consciousness, we are somehow not as free to fly the way we are in our dreams. So the dream experience, if we bring those thoughts and those ideas into our dreams, the dream sometimes allows us to have different perspectives, especially when we wake up in the morning and when we analyze the experiences that we had in our dream. It gives us a very, very different perspective to the same thing that we have been thinking. It happens to me, at least not very often, but I would say sometimes it has happened. So, so in this way, to be constantly engaged in cultivating this awareness, which is, for the Upanishadic masters, the source of peace. Peace cannot be found without being the moment, because as earlier also in my previous classes I said, that the content of our thoughts changes from thought to thought. If we are only anchored in that stream, then our boat will flow with the stream. And when there will be rapids, our boat will jump up and down. Where there is peaceful, it will be peaceful. It will not be, it can never be an everlasting peace as long as our boat is anchored on the changing, our awareness is anchored in the changing aspect of our thoughts. But if it is anchored in the changeless aspect of our thoughts, which is the light of consciousness present within every thought, if it is anchored in that substratum, then the boat stops. The boat is me. I stop flowing with the stream. The stream constantly flows. I'm not stopping the stream. This is important. I'm not stopping the stream, and the stream cannot be stopped. And if you stop the stream, it will have a reaction, unless, of course, you give it a very specific channel. But you have to give it a channel, otherwise it will fight back. But without stopping the stream, what can be done is, even in the example of a river, you can reach the bottom. And of course, the boat cannot reach the bottom, but you can dangle an anchor down and hold the bottom with the anchor. And once you hold the bottom with the anchor, then the boat stops flowing with the stream. The stream flows beneath it, but the boat is completely anchored. And that is the view of peace that the masters have. Not to stop the mind. Even if the mind is stopped, it is just part of the practice. But you can only stop the mind for maybe a few seconds initially. With practice, that can be increased, but how much will you increase? 1 hour, 2 hours. Stories tell that Swami Vivekananda ji was in complete deep meditation for 7 days. But for 7 days, what about 7 days? Still, the stream will continue. But then, what to do then? Then we have to be anchored. And this anchoring is ultimately what Brahmabhyasa is about. So, when he says to merge day and night, by that which has been received, this is called Brahmabhyasa in the teachings of the masters who explain these mantras. And also in an Upanishadic context, let me take this a little bit further, because I have been talking about bhakti, devotion. In an Upanishadic context, this is what devotion, what bhakti, what total engagement means. And the idea is that when you love something deeply, wholeheartedly, then you naturally think about it. So, to be in a constant state of awareness, that is how the definition of bhakti has been provided by some of the masters, particularly in the introductory texts of the Vedantic path initially, what is initially bhakti, devotion. This constant engagement in cultivating this awareness. So, because in my essential nature, I am what I am, always. But the question is, am I always aware of it on the intellectual level? On the level from where I speak, from where I talk, from where I act, and from where I think. Is the awareness present on that level or not? The idea is that if every thought, every word and every deed is to be inspired by this awareness of universal oneness, oneness with all beings, then that awareness has to be present on that level, always. So this comes with a lot of practice. So, to sum up what he's saying quintessentially is that let us ruminate day and night. You understand? Does everybody understand ruminate? Rumination, like animal or cow or goats. First of all, what they do, they just collect everything, fill up their bellies, and then they sit down somewhere peacefully, and then they take it up. And I sort of never completely realized it till I was 16, 17 or 18 years old, and one day I was sitting on the other side in that sand which is there, and a huge bull. There used to be a very huge bull, big bull in this area, very big and very, very beautiful, white, completely with black eyes. And huge. So he came from somewhere next to the river, because the river is cool in the summer, so he was sitting next to the river. He came, and I was also sitting with my father there, and after 3-4 hours, when he left, there was a huge pile of mango stones where he was sitting. Then I wondered, from where did these mango stones come? And then I realized that he had carried, because what he would have done, there was a mango forest in the backside. He would have been eating mangoes in the forest, filling up his stomach, then came to the Ganga and started chewing it, and then threw out the stones, and the rest he actually ate. So that is rumination, or I see monkeys doing the same thing. First of all, they quickly collect everything, and they collect it here, and then after they have collected it, then with their hands they press it back into their mouth, and then they chew it. So first they collect it quickly, because they have to be very quick, because there are 20, 30, 40, 50 of them. If they are not quick, then others will take it away. so but then they ruminate on that. So the idea is the same for a student, that when we come to a class, we quickly collect everything that is being taught, and then we chew on that, we ruminate that, we think about that. So, and if we think that there is a problem with our memory, then I would say that none of us has a problem with memory. We have a good enough memory. The problem is interest. The problem is not memory. The problem is interest. If someone has said something bad to you, and you can remember it for not days together, but for years together, that clearly shows that there is no problem with your memory. If somebody has said, "Stupid Siddhartha," and you forget it after 2 days, yes, or then I can say that, yes, there is a problem with memory. But if I never ever forget it, the moment I see that person, that memory again comes up. He said this. then there is obviously no problem with memory. The problem is more with interest, with how much interest have I listened to it, have I heard it. If I would, because the mind has these unconscious filters. When we listen something with interest, then it labels it as, wow, interesting information. This should be retained. And if we listen something with less interest, then thank God it has the capacity to get rid of it. So in fact, we should be thankful for our forgetfulness, that we can actually forget things, because the mind, whenever it labels something as unnecessary, less interesting, then it forgets it after a few minutes or after a few hours. So the problem is more with our interest, not with our memory. When we hear with interest, and interest comes again when, as we practice. That's why practice and study in the yogic aspect have to go hand in hand. Because when we see something lacking in our practice, then we search for it in the teachings. Then when teachings don't make sense, then we test them in practice. So practice and teaching, they both go hand in hand. And that is why the yogic masters such as Vyasa give so much importance on Swadhyaya, on studying, and on practicing. One of them is not enough. Both of them have to go hand in hand. So why he's mentioning this again? So because this for him is the practice that leads towards finding peace within oneself, as the central thought, the central idea, the central sutra, the thread which goes through all the different beads. The central thread is always Shanti. Every bead has to be seen. This is a bead by this that has been studied. I merge day and night. This is a bead, but within it is the thread of Shanti, is the thread of peace. That for him, for Mahidasa Aitareya, this is a practice that leads towards finding peace within us. The next section speaks about the universal truth and the truth as it is on this level of experience, two types of truths, and only speaking these two types of truths. That will come in the next session. We will discuss that in our next session. So with this, let us conclude. Any comments, questions, clarifications, thoughts, anything that was not clear? Ji.
You mentioned that we listen and then we can remind. Yeah?
Retain.
Sometimes maybe we listen wrong thing and then we remind and keep going on. So,
Yeah, that's why I think Shravana, listening first. If we would listen mindfully.
the mind also going to
Yes, that is there. That is a problem that also the Upanishadic masters. Sorry, sir. Anyat pramana abhuvam. My mind went somewhere else. Na shrausam. I didn't hear what you said. So either a student has to do what the student of the Upanishads does, that the moment his mind wanders away, he says, sir, can you repeat yourself again? So in a one-on-one dialogue, this is possible. The Upanishadic dialogue, the yogic dialogue has mostly always been one-on-one. It was only after the Buddha, and with the Buddha it seems, and at the time of Buddha, because even I would say it is only Buddha, because I can't now, for example, even the Jaina masters at the time of Buddha, Mahavira, they always used to speak only to one person. So you could have 100 people, they could have had 100 people sitting in front of them, but they would be teaching only to what was, to the person who is referred to in later Jaina history as a Ganadhara. They are referred to as the Ganadhara, who then later on propounded the original teachings of the masters. But the original 24 Tirthankaras always spoke only to one person. So Mahavira, even at the time of the Buddha, was in fact only speaking to one person. So I know of no one else at the time of Buddha and before Buddha who spoke to a huge group of people. I think Buddha is really the first person who speaks to many and addresses many. If you look at his discourses, he always addresses, O Brahmins and Shravanas, in plural. So he's really addressing everybody, because he feels that his message and his version, his rendition, his presentation is not for one, but for the many. But before that, in the Upanishads, we always, even if 6 students come, the teacher will always speak only to one of them at once. First your question, question answer, then the second one, then third one. It's always one. Never 2, 3. So there it is possible. You can answer. Even I remember when I was studying in Kailas Ashram, this was at least symbolically maintained. This tradition of teaching one person was symbolically maintained. So for example, my teacher used to choose one of the most permanently present students, and he would mostly try to address only that student, even if there are 100 people there. He would address that student only, and you could ask questions to him, but everything was more playing out as a dialogue between these two, instead of addressing, particularly when we were studying the Upanishads. So here the emphasis is very much. Now in today's, coming back to her question, today, hopefully some students do this. The moment first of all, they have to realize that their mind went somewhere else. To many, this realization doesn't come because there is no mindfulness. But the moment this realization comes, then either we have to ask, or we have to hope that the teacher will repeat themselves, or a good teacher might say things twice, the same practice twice. If someone has missed it once, then they will have heard it the second time. Wrong understanding, because your question was about wrong understanding. Wrong understanding usually comes generally it can only come through 2 things. Either we did not hear attentively, or the teacher did not use the correct word, the correct language to convey. Language is a big problem. As I said, the Upanishadic masters tried everything to correct their language. This is how Samskrita, the refined, because Samskrita means supremely refined. That is what Samskrita means. All other languages in India were called Prakrita. Prakrita, which means natural languages. Languages which come naturally to human beings. But this is Samskrita, refined. Refined to such an extent so that it can convey the truth properly. So then these 2 problems have to be tackled. So from his side, the teacher should be as clear as possible, which doesn't leave room for misunderstanding. And this again, for this the teacher has to constantly analyze that how his message can be misunderstood. So he has to engage with those possible misrepresentations, misinterpretations. He has to speak in such a way so that it doesn't leave room for misrepresentation and misunderstanding. But it also requires tremendous effort from the side of the student. He has to be completely mindful. So it's a mutual effort. As we saw in the second Shanti mantra, the emphasis is on making an effort. Saha viryam karavavai. May we do virya, may we work hard, both together. I and we both, which means the student and the teacher, both have to work tremendously hard for this knowledge to be conveyed properly. If the teacher becomes lazy, he will misconvey, then he will say things like I said in one of my previous classes, may lead me from light to darkness. That is how I translate it. That's what happens the moment the teacher becomes lazy. And so that is one possibility. And the students also have to make a tremendous effort. So I'm glad that there were several students who did catch my slip of tongue, and then after the class came back to me and said, okay, I hope that is what you meant. So thank God. So that means that effort is on both sides. So hope that clarifies the question. Okay, so let us conclude, and then we will sit for the next Yoga Sutra session. Isn't it today we are going to? Yes. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्।